Do you think we have it bad when it comes to Donald Trump and tariffs? Well, Brazil, 50% tariff slapped on Brazil. The United States, northerly neighbor, its closest ally, essentially cousins. Canada, 35%. South Africa will have a 30% tariff imposed by the US on South African goods entering the US market, and it will have very real consequences, not just for the owners of the exporting companies. This week we've spoken to exporters, we've spoken to the agricultural industry, we spoke to the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, on just how worrying is this 30% tariff that will come into effect on the 1st of August. It's because South Africa's export economy is so deeply connected to employment across a wide range of industries: agriculture, manufacturing, mining, logistics. The South African agricultural industry alone, almost 1 million people employed in and around farms and farm processing facilities. It's from production to packaging and distribution, and it's these sectors that depend on a stable global demand. But what about you and I? What about the impact on tariffs on our household? People are very much likely to lose jobs. This is going to affect our pocket, it's going to affect our pantry, and it may even affect people that we know and love. Annaline van der Poel is the COO of Debt Rescue. Good morning, Annaline. Really appreciate your time. Why and how will ordinary South Africans be hardest hit by this 30% tariff hike announced by Donald Trump?
Good morning, Lester, and good morning to your listeners. Yeah, I think it's really important that we always remember that ultimately us as consumers and ordinary South Africans do get affected by these macroeconomic factors that are beyond our control but do affect us directly. And the biggest concerns we are currently worried about are obviously, you've just mentioned, the possibility of job losses. That is a very, very real situation that could transpire if America is not importing from us anymore, or imports slow down. Local manufacturers and producers might start looking at reducing their workforce, which then is going to cause an even higher unemployment rate. We know we're sitting with this massive 32.9% already as it is. And then the secondary effect is this kind of instability is one of the factors that the Reserve Bank ultimately does take into account when they look at the interest rates, reductions that we've been hoping for. And something like this could definitely, we know they are very cautious, and could definitely lead to them being even more cautious at looking at decreases. We were quite hopeful that that possibility existed at the end of this month, but that ultimately hurts us as consumers again.
From an employer-worker dynamic, do you think it would be best advised that employers start insulating workers about what the effects could be come the 1st of August? The South African government is hoping it can ward off these tariffs. He's called Taco Trump. Trump always chickens out, is what Wall Street calls him. But we have a date, and that's the 1st of August. And if that date does come, whether South Africa can maybe reach a bilateral trade agreement with the United States before then, maybe that could save us. But do you think employers should be starting to insulate workers, or at least informing them on what these geopolitical effects could have on their livelihoods, on their households?
I think yes. I think if your business is of such a nature that you are going to see a dramatic effect, and you cannot diversify, in other words, you cannot look towards supplementing that with other countries that you could export to, then I think it will be prudent of them to be honest, open, and give them the true reality of what they might face in the future. But we are hopeful that obviously government is able to come to some form of agreement that is more reasonable and will not harm us. But I think it would be wise, if it is a reality, to start having the real conversations, and ultimately hoping that that they can have some think tanks and look at alternatives such as diversification into different new markets.
It's a grim outlook. It's a grim backdrop. because South African consumers, households, we've had price increases when it's come to food, electricity prices, municipal hikes. What this means would be an unstable economy, an economy that could see interest rates goes up. That then impacts on how much I then repay on my credit cards or on my home loans. Um, just what should South Africans be waiting for? Are these the dark days that are ahead of us?
I think what South Africans need to do is just be very cautious at this point at how they spend. Really, really be very aware of what is going on in terms of your personal finances. Avoid any unnecessary high cost purchases right now. Just keep an eye on things until it stabilizes. I know most consumers have already cut back dramatically. We know it's National Savings Month, and we're currently doing a survey to get an idea of if consumers can even save. Are they able to do so? But I think from a consumer perspective, it's just try and avoid debt, unnecessary debt, high cost debt, and really have an understanding of your personal finance. If you still have that ability, leave some leeway, leave a bit of a gap so that you are able to put money aside and not live to the absolute maximum of your means, because that is what we tend to do.
Yeah, just how much runway does the average South African household have? There are some worrying statistics that are bandied about. Something like 12 million South African adults struggle with debt, but also then relying on credit to cope. Just how much runway do South Africans have?
Very little. I'm going to be very honest with you. I mean, we see this every single day. Consumers have, like I say, they've cut back on unnecessary expenses. They've cut back on unnecessary subscriptions and services, etc. And they are still unable to meet, their minimum debt repayments because we have these high interest rates still. Even though they've come down, they are still incredibly high. Cost of living, as you've mentioned, has spiked. So for the average South African, there is very little room for maneuver left in their budgets. There isn't really much they can do. And we are, unfortunately, the reality of what we're seeing is consumers are finding themselves in a debt spiral where they are having to take out more payday loans, rely more on credit cards and store cards to put food on the table, quite literally. So it is a very concerning situation that we're already sitting with without this being added to it.
Annaline van der Poel, really appreciate your time, COO of Debt Rescue.